There is nothing worse than when you ask someone a simple question about their ideology, or provide an argument against their position, and they fail to respond with anything, and instead simply advise you to read 10 different books. If those books are so good, surely you can summarize the knowledge they hold into a point yourself. The Read Theory response is as lazy as it gets. It is just embarrassing, to be honest. What better way of turning people away from your ideology than not being able to explain anything, and instead simply telling them to read 10 books, which you read and apparently have nothing to show for it? Reading recommendations for people to expand their knowledge are completely fine. They are good and can be very useful. Here I am talking about people who want to talk politics, but are either lazy or have a terrible understanding of their own beliefs, and for this reason, point at theory rather than actually making any points themselves. The kinds of people who are useless at making any arguments and thinking for themselves, and instead point at some 800-page book they probably never even read, because they don't seem to understand any of the arguments inside of it. I have a proposal for you. If your theory is so good, there is literally nothing better than making an argument yourself, supporting this argument with a quote or idea from that particular piece of theory, and then recommending the person you are talking to read that theory if they want to improve and expand their understanding. This would be a very good way of making theory-based arguments. It is far from lazy, it makes you look like you know what you're talking about. Read the theory and learn something about it. It makes you look like you're a serious person. This might actually encourage someone to look further into theory, and even if they didn't, they will still have been introduced to your summarized argument. My point is that theory on its own is not an argument. It can form the basis of an argument and can help strengthen it. On its own, however, theory recommendations are lazy and useless. They make you look like an idiot who doesn't actually have any idea what you're talking about. Nobody wants to hear you virtue signal about the books that you apparently read. What they do want to hear is you making an interesting, well-worded argument which are supported by quotations and ideas from theory when necessary. Theory recommendations are good, but they are not a substitute for answers or arguments. If the theory is useful and you actually understand it, you should be able to communicate it yourself. You shouldn't need to direct people to buy the book or something like that. My point is simple. Understand and communicate ideas yourself. Find new ways of sharing them that work for you and that you find effective for winning over normal people. Reading recommendations are useful, but they are not a substitution for arguments. They are merely an add-on for anyone who is interested.